Good evening. I am the Maven of the Eventide, and welcome back to the Vampire Library. Happy birthday to me! Yes, it's been my birthday month, and you know how I love to celebrate my birthday? With zombie movies. Just kidding. With vampire books. So yes, thanks to the unending march of terrible time that drives us all to yearn for the unattainable quest of immortality, it was my birthday this month, and people sent me vampire books as birthday gifts. Books and things. So many vampire things and spooky goth things that are tangentially related to vampires. And I'm going to share them with you now because they are so amazing and I love them so much. Some of these books and things were sent to me by you. People send vampire books to my P.O. box all the time, but it was my birthday, so people were really generous this month. And some of them are from my family because my family also knows that I like vampire books and things, and they like to support my habits. I was so excited to get this book because I had heard about it before. Even though I had neglected to even add it to my vampire wish list, someone just randomly sent it to me. This is Slay. It's an anthology, so it has a bunch of short stories in it. Stories of the Vampire Noir, edited by Nicole Givens-Kurtz of Mocha Memoirs Press. And I happen to know Nicole Givens-Kurtz. She is a local author and publisher where I live, and I see her at author events all the time. I see her at conventions, and she's an amazing, amazing person. And her press focuses on publishing sci-fi and fantasy stories by or about Black people. And this is Stories of the Vampire Noir. So we're talking about Black vampires. Yes, please. Mocha Memoirs Press is proud to present Slay, Stories of the Vampire Noir, a revolutionary anthology celebrating vampires of the African diaspora. Slay is a groundbreaking, unique collection and will be a must-have for vampire lovers all over the world. Slay aims to be the first anthology of its kind. Few creatures in contemporary horror are as compelling as the vampire, who manages to captivate us in a simultaneous state of fear and desire. Drawing from a variety of cultural and mythological backgrounds, Slay dares to imagine a world of horror and wonder where Black protagonists take center stage as vampires, as hunters, as heroes. From immortal African deities to resistance fighters, matriarchal vampire broods to monster hunting fathers, coming-of-age stories to end-of-life stories, Slay is a groundbreaking Afrocentric vampire anthology celebrating the rich cultural heritage of the African diaspora. And it has a list of all the authors, featuring anchor stories by award-winning authors, and then additional contributing authors. And there is a ton in here, a ton of stories. I'm so excited to read this. I saw Nicole promoting this not long ago when it was first coming out, and now I have it. Now it's mine. A Small Charred Face by Kazuki Sakuraba, translated by Jocelyn Allen. Also, that's a Japanese name, so I'm guessing it was originally written in Japanese and then translated to English. But I may be wrong because it seems to be about China, so maybe it was written in another language. What are the bamboo? They are from China. They look just like us. They live by night. They drink human lifeblood, but otherwise keep their distance. And every century, they grow white, blooming flowers. A boy named Kyo is saved from the precipice of death by a bamboo, a vampire born of the tall grasses. They start an enjoyable yet strange shared life together. Kyo and gentle bamboo, but for bamboo, communication with human beings is the greatest sin. And there's a blurb on it from Silvia Monero Garcia, author of Certain Dark Things, who is amazing, and I love her. She writes some very good gothic stories. Certain Dark Things is her vampire story. It's currently out of print, so you can't read it, but plenty of her other books are amazing, like Mexican Gothic and The Beautiful Ones. So she says, vampire stories are not dead. The bamboo are a different type of monster ripe for our cynical age. Thank you so much for sending this to me. I'd never even heard of this one before. And more vampire books by and about not Western white people. The Immortal Rules by Julie Kagawa. A darkly thrilling dystopian saga begins. This is the first in a series, eh? When did this come out? This is published by Harlequin Teen, so that means it's a young adult book. And this came out in 2012. What if having a chance to save humanity meant becoming what you hate and fear most? Alison Sekimoto survives in the Fringe, the outmost circle of a walled-in city. By day, she and her crew scavenge food. By night, any one of them could be eaten. Some days, all that drives Allie is her hatred of them, the vampires who keep humans as blood cattle, until the night Allie herself dies and becomes one of the monsters. Forced to flee her city, Allie must pass for human as she joins a ragged group of pilgrims seeking a legend, a place that might have a cure for the disease that killed off most of the civilization and created the Rabbids, the bloodthirsty creatures who threaten human and vampire alike. And soon, Allie will have to decide what and who is worth dying for again. Wow, that premise sounds very similar to my book, so I'm probably going to love this. My book being The Company of Death, which is about a protagonist who becomes a zombie in a world of zombies and vampires, and the rabbits sound like zombies, and who has to travel to a place with a group to get a cure. Very similar premise, so sounds right up my alley. Thank you for sending this to me. I'd never even heard of this, even though it's been out since 2012, apparently. Grad School Can Really Suck by Bailey Cavender. I like that this very simple cover has someone opening a book, but it's in the shape of a V, which automatically makes you think like vampires, right? But it's also kind of like that Twilight knockoff cover, so it's also still giving those vibes. And then there's like some mysterious ancient dust coming out of this book. It's a very evocative cover for a vampire book. Good job. I think this is a self-published book. Yeah, this is self-published, but it says it's the author's 14th book. Xander Stoker believes in making the most of his undead life. Raised by Bram Stoker, mentored by Edgar Allan Poe, all Xander wants to do now is finish his 15th master's degree. With his friends Stacy and Seb, he travels and learns, burying his past as a fearsome vampire hunter, while his friends struggle with their own pasts. Spending a decade studying in Seattle seems like the perfect place to be for Xander and his friends. But 4 unruly vampires arrive. A murderer is stalking their campus, and an ancient evil is unleashed by some interns. With deadlines looming, there's even more at stake, forcing each vampire to face something from their past. Can Xander and his friends save the world and complete their degrees? Grad school can really suck. So it sounds like he is a vampire who is also a vampire hunter. And that mention of Bram Stoker and Edgar Allan Poe really intrigued me because I love me some gothic mashup. Dracula's Child by J.S. Barnes. This came out last year. It's been out for about a year. Evil never truly dies. Inventive and spooky, says Mark Gatiss, co-creator of the hit BBC series Dracula and Sherlock. If Mark Gatiss likes it, I wonder what that means. A lot of people didn't like the new Dracula. The dark heart of Bram Stoker's classic is reborn. It has been some years since Jonathan and Mina Harker survived their ordeal in Transylvania, and after vanquishing Count Dracula, returned to England to try to live ordinary lives. But shadows linger long, and the older their son Quincy gets, the deeper the shadows at the heart of the Harker family. And on the continent, a new evil is arising. A naturalist brings a new species of bat back to London. I wonder if it's the vampire bat, which is from South America and does not exist in Europe naturally. 2 English gentlemen on their separate tours of the continent find a strange, quixotic love for each other. Ooh, gay love story, love it. And stumble into a calamity far worse than either has imagined. And the vestiges of something thought long ago forgotten is finally beginning to stir. What do you want to bet that this is another book where it turns out that Quincy Harker is kind of part vampire because Mina was pregnant with him during the time when she was under Dracula's influence? This is a very common trope that happens a lot, but maybe they'll do it differently than the others have done it before. I'm intrigued. I like that it has several subplots that also sound interesting. This is The Van Allen Legacy by Melissa de la Cruz, and it's the 4th book in the Blue Bloods series, which I talked about last time. I had gotten the first 3 books as a gift from someone, and I saw this on the bargain price bookshelf for $2.97, and I actually get 10% off at the bookstore because I'm a member, so it was actually only $2.67, so I figured I might as well get it to add to my Blue Bloods collection since I only had the first 3 books before. I've not read this one, even though I've read those other 3, and they did have in the bargain bin a couple others in the series, but not the one that comes after this, so I didn't want to get those and like be missing one in the middle, so I figured I'd just get this one. You know, not bad for $2.67. As I mentioned last time, The Blue Bloods is a series where the vampires are reincarnated angels who have to find their soulmates as they're born again as vampires in every new lifetime. And they're also really rich New York socialites. These are 2 books in the Strange Angels series. Neither of them are Strange Angels, which is the first book in the series, but I have Defiance and Jealousy. And this is a young adult series about a 16-year-old who goes up against, like, vampires and stuff. There's zombies, there's other things. Strange Angels is the first book, Betrayals is the second, Jealousy is the third. Jealousy is the third, and Defiance is the fourth, but I don't have Strange Angels or Betrayal. So I'm going to hang on to these until I get those first 2 as well, and then I'll be able to read them. By Lily St. Crow. Dark, dangerous, and sexy, says Rochelle Mead, author of Vampire Academy series. Could they have found cover models that looked anything more like Kristen Stewart and Taylor Lautner? I mean, obviously not exactly, but the vibes are definitely there, and it looks like the same pose as the Twilight poster. Totally see it. 2 books in the Generation Dead series by Daniel Waters. I got the first one, Generation Dead, and this is Kiss of Life. You see like a vampire in a coffin being kissed by a football player. I'm not sure if this is the second book in the series, but this is definitely the first book in the series, and these were released by Disney's teen young adult novel imprint. The New York Times says it's witty and well written. All over the country, a strange phenomenon is occurring. Some teenagers who die aren't staying dead, but when they come back to life, they're no longer the same. Feared and misunderstood, they're doing their best to blend into society that doesn't want them. The administration at Oakville High attempts to be more welcoming of the differently biotic, but the students don't want to take classes or eat in the cafeteria next to someone who isn't breathing, and there are no laws to protect the living impaired from people who want them to disappear for good. So it sounds like a minority allegory. When Phoebe falls for Tommy Williams, the leader of the Dead Kids, no one can believe it. Not her best friend Margie, and especially not her neighbor Adam, the star of the football team. And others won't stand for it. Adam has feelings for Phoebe that run much deeper than friendship. He would do anything for her. But what if protecting Tommy is the one thing that would make her happy? So is a sexy vampire boyfriend Tommy? Or are there no vampires in the first book? Like, she kind of looks like a zombie. They sound like zombies, but I think there's definitely vampires in this book, one way or another. This book came out in 2008, right at the height of the Twilight craze. I'm not sure how many were in the series total, but I got these 2 now. Thank you. Actually, a lot of these books and things were sent to me by the same person. One person sent me a giant box full of stuff. I took a picture of all the stuff that was in the box before I unwrapped it. Look at all that stuff. One person sent me that for my birthday. I was blown away. It was just so sweet. The Mammoth Book of Vampire Stories by Women, edited by Stephen Jones, introduced by Ingrid Pitt. This has been on my wish list for a long time, and now I finally have it. I'm very excited. Mistresses of the Macabre. In literature and lore, women have long been helpless victims of vampires, but in the last 50 years, female characters have taken on a new tough attitude, donning the mantle of bloodlusting predator as often arbiter and slayer of such creatures, and they've embraced these roles with wit, intelligence, daring, and unabashed sexuality, thanks in part to the women who created them. Here, collected together for the first time, are 34 tales by vampiric fiction's greatest women writers, from Edith Nesbit's 1913 story of a mad scientist's vampiric experiments, to Storm Constantine's 2001 tale of a woman's hypnotic regression to a time of bloodthirsty shamans. These uncanny and erotic stories dip into the darkest well of human fear and feeling, exposing blood drinkers of every shade from the tormented good to unspeakably evil. Among these children of the night, you'll meet Chelsea Quinn Yarborough's Byronic vampire Saint Germain, Nancy A. Collins' undead heroine Sonia Blue, Tanya Huff's vampire detective Vicki Nelson, and many others, including an alien succubus, an undead matchmaker, a bloodthirsty puppet, a Japanese Bloody Mary, featuring the only vampire short story written by Anne Rice, and boasting an autobiographical introduction and original tale by Ingrid Pitt. I didn't know Ingrid Pitt wrote short stories about vampires. That's amazing. Star of cult films The Vampire Lovers and Countess Dracula. This is one anthology vampire fans can sink their teeth into. Yeah, it's going to have the Master of Rampling Gate by Anne Rice. Of course it does. Which, as much as I love Anne Rice's work, I don't think is that great. It's in a lot of my anthologies. I actually just rearranged my bookshelves. I had to get a new bookshelf for my birthday too. That was my birthday gift to me, was a new bookshelf, because I was running out of room. So now in my vampire library, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bookshelves, and they're bigger ones too. But anyway, the Anne Rice short story, The Master of Rampling Gate, it's just a very classic gothic vampire story that you've kind of heard a million times already. But, done in her style, if that's your cup of tea. A copy of Vampires by Christopher Frayling, and this is the new updated edition, Genesis and Resurrection from Count Dracula to Vampirella. This book came out in oldie times, like, I don't know, the 70s or something, but it was re-released in the 2000s. When did this come out? 2016, this came out. So in this nice, fat, updated version of this essential vampire book that you need for your vampire research. Our enduring fascination with the vampire has its roots in Eastern European villages in the 18th century, when rumors of bodies rising from the dead swept across Europe and sparked mass hysteria. The stories of blood-sucking undead quickly caught the imagination of writers and artists, and have inspired countless retellings and interpretations. From these first stories of vampirism to the recent success of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Twilight, Christopher Frayling explores how and why the vampire has become one of the most enduring figures in the history of mass culture. He hunts down the literary origins of the vampire, first by vividly recounting the most significant moments in Gothic history, from 1816 overlooking Lake Geneva, where Percy Shelley married Godwin Lord Byron and his physician Dr. Polidori gathered to tell ghost stories resulting in the genesis of The Vampire, with a Y, and Frankenstein, to Bram Stoker's Nightmare that produced Dracula, one of the most influential horror novels of all time, and subsequently through an anthology of text extracts ranging from Bram Stoker's research notes to Penny Dreadfuls and finally to Angela Carter's Lady in the House of Love. Oh, we talked about that in my last video about vampire books. This expanded and updated edition of Frayling's 1978 classic is a comprehensive study and celebration of the vampire in the visual arts as well as literature, showcasing 18th century prints to 21st century film stills and demonstrating the enduring appeal of the vampire across fine art, film, and literature, and includes 62 illustrations. Absolutely essential for your vampire research library. Fred Saberhagen's Seance for a Vampire, author of Bram Stoker's Dracula's movie novelization. Holmes, Watson, and Dracula, back again and in top form, in a tale that mesmerizes the reader. Yes, this is the same author as book I've talked to you about before, which is the Holmes-Dracula file, Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula. So I'm not going to read the back of the book because I don't want to spoil it for you because it sort of picks up where that one ends off. But neither of those are the first book in this series anyway, because the Dracula series starts with the Dracula tapes. And then the Holmes Dracula files, the book I have. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more books before you get to Seance for a Vampire. So this is just one of the random books in that series. And I've got 6 others that I need before I can even get to this. This one came out in 1994. But the Fred Saberhagen Dracula series, classic vampire series. A Buffy the Vampire Slayer tie-in novel. This one's called Child of the Hunt. And I have another one that I read to you about last time. What is this one about? What is Buffy up to this time? Evil things come in small packages. Jousting contests, human chess matches, lords and ladies and beggars, a traveling Renaissance fair has come to Sunnydale. The fair may seem terminally uncool, but Buffy and her friends are charmed anyway. Who thinks Ren fairs are uncool? Why does Buffy have to be such a snob? Especially by a sad-eyed boy named Roland who serves as the court jester. Unfortunately, the people from the fair are not the only visitors in Sunnydale. Roaming the countryside are nasty little creatures with a taste for flesh, the Dark Fairy. I wonder why it says they're little, and evil things come in small packages. So they're small people, like the fair folk who are the small people. They are minions of the Wild Hunt, servants of the evil Earl King. Buffy's challenge is to annihilate the king and his murderous horde, but the path to his destruction leads straight to Roland, who is not quite human and destined to become the Slayer's mortal adversary. So the other book that I have in this series is about a carnival that comes to town, and the carnies are evil, and I think there's little people in that too, and they're the evil ones. What is up with this series and evil small people? I'm a little bit concerned about that. None of these are in order, but I think most of them just have to do like standalone novels that if you're familiar with Buffy, you can read them. So the one I have is Coyote Moon, and that looks like that's 1, 2, 3, 4th in series, and then this would be 5, 6, 7, I guess 8th in the series, if the flap is to be believed. Only his soul was human. I like that Buffy has like a sexy, tortured love interest in this book that doesn't live beyond one book. Unholy Allies. Masquerade of the Red Death Trilogy, Volume 2, A Vampire the Masquerade novel by Robert Weinberg. I don't think I have number 1 in this series, but for Vampire the Masquerade tie-in novels published by White Wolf Publishing. He came like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel. Okay, Masquerade of the Red Death. I mean, that's what the Mask of the Red Death does. So, what is the Red Death up to? The Red Death, a powerful vampire thousands of years old, has made a blood bargain with monstrous fire creatures from another dimension. As you do. With their aid and the support of the Order of Dreadful Night, he plots to rule the world as master of the undead. The challenge. The only 2 people who can stop the Red Death are Dyer McCann and Alicia Varney. Varney. To do this, they must find the one vampire who knows the key to the Red Death's identity. But time is running out, and the Red Death will do anything in its power to destroy them. The world. Unholy Allies is set in White Wolf's publishing World of Darkness, written by World Fantasy Award-winning writer Robert Weinberg, co-author of The Vampire Diary, The Embrace, and the sole author of Mage, The Ascension Trilogy, The Horizon War. Unholy Allies is continued in the exciting conclusion to the Vampire War Trilogy, The Unbeholden. So you got the Red Death, Unholy Allies, and then next one. And we got nice Nosferatu on the cover. I got some comic books. Okay, so this is really cool. This is called Vlada, A Dreadful Tale. And it's not a comic book. It's like a book with comic-style illustrations beside it, but in a graphic novel format. It is by Chris DeMede with art by Ken Hunt. And the premise of it is Dracula, but gender-swapped? Or all-female or something? Anyway, Dracula's a lady in this. I'm very intrigued. Her name is Vlada instead of Vlad. You know, so she is the same Dracula. She's Vlada the Impaler. And I cannot wait to read it. It's got a blurb from Dacre Stoker on the back, our good friend Dacre Stoker. I am no stranger to female vamps, and I firmly believe that variation and adaptation of the original keeps the genre alive. So Dacre Stoker supports Dracula being gender swapped to a woman, and so do I. I'm very excited to read this. Thank you for sending this to me. This was sent to me by the creator who wanted me to have it so that I could read it and give my opinion. And when I read it, I will. This is a Jughead, The Hunger versus Vampironica. You can see we got a big old werewolf, and Veronica's been turned into a vampire. This is number 3 in the Archie horror series. And then we have Star Wars Adventures, Tales from Vader's Castle, Beware the Briar Witch. I don't know that there's any vampires in this, but we got like Han and Chewie fighting a Briar Witch who looks very cool and gothy. So as you'll recall previously, I received this graphic novel, which is Winter's Teeth, Book 1, The Vampire the Masquerade tie-in graphic novel. And it's their first graphic novel of this session. And this was just the first half of the story. It has 5 comics in it collected in this. So now the same person has also sent me the next comics that we've got, number 5, 6, 7, and 8, and it's going to go up to 10. So once I have all 10, I'll have finished reading them all, and then I'll be able to tell you what I think about it. Vampire the Masquerade tie-in comics, Winter's Teeth. Now these I'm super excited about. These I bought for myself because I've always wanted them and never had them. These are the comic book adaptation of Anne Rice's Queen of the Damned. There's 11 issues. See, full color comics. I had Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat, but I never had the Queen of the Damned. I'd seen it in ebook, but I've never had the physical books. The sad thing about this is that it was a 12-issue series, and they stopped at 11. They never published the 12th issue, so the story is incomplete, and there's no way that you can find out what would have happened in the 12th issue. If you've read Queen of the Damned, the book, you would know what would happen, and I'm very disappointed that that's not here, because the 11th one stops kind of right before the climax, so I think the 12th one would have started with the climax where the queen gets defeated. And then the whole rest of 12 was going to be like the day-to-day life of Lestat and friends trying to reacclimate to normal life after their world was destroyed. And that's the part I really wanted to read, but no, No Night Island for us. So one thing about this comic is that this is how they draw Akasha, the ancient Egyptian queen. And she is described in the books as completely white color because the older a vampire gets, the more color they lose from their body until they just turn into like basically clear glass, but white, but full of blood. I don't know why they're not red, but they're white. So even though she's Egyptian, she has white skin, but they didn't draw her with Egyptian features or Egyptian hair either, and that kind of bothers me. Like, I would like to at least have seen her have like Middle Eastern or African features. But nope, she just looks like a white lady. These came out in the 90s. I want to say like 94 or something. And I got the collected Tale of the Body Thief comics. So the Tale of the Body Thief only had 4 issues. And you can tell that it was supposed to have more. And again, something happened and they had to rush it or end it or stop it. So like this much is like the very first half of the book. And then like this much is the whole second half of Tale of the Body Thief book. And it's a long book. So the fact that they rushed the entire like resolution and everything in the story just in what would have been the 4th issue of the comic, it's disappointing. But for what it is, it's enjoyable. This is one of my favorite Lestat stories. And this collected version also features the original essay, 26 Years with My Beloved Immortals by Anne Rice, where she just kind of goes over every single one of her vampire books and just talks about her thoughts and feelings about it. And that I love to read because, you know, I am that kind of nerd. What else I got here? So some of these aren't vampire things, but I'm going to share them with you anyway because they are on brand. Well, this is a vampire thing. This is 100 Miles in Vampin', a Straight Outta Fangton novel, and we read Straight Outta Fangton on this show earlier by C.T. Phipps. So you recall Straight Outta Fangton is a story about a vampire who lives in Detroit who's just like not having a good time being a vampire. Life is hard. And this is the next novel in the series. And this author, C.T. Phipps, also sent me their other book, which is not a vampire book, but which is I Was a Teenage Weredeer, which is exactly what it says on the cover. Teenage Weredeer, so like a werewolf, but a deer. C.T. Phipps and Michael Sutkis. Jane Doe is a weredeer, the least threatening shapeshifter species in the world. Blessed with the ability to turn furry at will and psychically read objects, Jane has done her best to live a normal life working as a waitress at the Delightful Diner. She has big dreams of escaping life in the supernatural-filled town of Bright Falls, Michigan, and her 18th birthday promises the beginning of her teenage dreams come true. Unfortunately, her birthday is ruined by the sudden murder of her best friend's sister in an apparent occult killing. Oh, and her brother is the primary suspect. Allying with the eccentric FBI agent, the local crime lord, and a snarky were-crow, Jane has her work cut out for her in turning her big day around. Thankfully, she's game. Dear puns. I don't want to read the blurb for 100 Miles in Vampin' to you because I don't want any spoilers in case you haven't read Straight Outta Fangton before, but if you haven't, you should check out my video on it on this channel. It was an enjoyable read. Then you can read the sequel. Hades Speaks, Secrets of the Ancient Gods. You know I love me some Greek mythology. I did name my fledgling spawn Persephone, who is famous for being Hades' bride. So even though this is not vampires, this is very on brand. Everything you've always wanted to know about the Greek underworld. Hades, the Greek god of the dead, is waiting to take you on tour of his kingdom in this riveting introduction to Greek mythology. It's a children's book, so it's like, you know, baby's first underworld. Here you will learn about the mighty gods, terrifying monsters, ancient rites, magic spells, and furies with bloody talons that can tear a mortal to shreds. But stay close. Only the Dark Lord can guarantee your safety in the underworld. Remember, do not enter if you are afraid of the dark or of the dead. I know what I'm reading to my fledgling spawn for bedtime tonight. A book in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar series, Nefertata, The Dominion of Bones, David Annandale. I don't know if this has vampires or not. I know Warhammer does have vampires. I don't know if this particular one does. It's by Black Library Publication. Nefertata is besieged. To the east, the demon prince Gronos gathers the legions of the blood god. Are the legions of the blood god vampires? I don't know. Seeking to tear Mortark from her throne. To the south, Sigmar's storm heralds the coming of the anvils of the Heldenhammer, intent on pressing the god king's claim. All the while, an ancient enemy grows. Is the ancient enemy vampires? I don't know. Hidden within Nefertata's lands, never has her power seemed so fragile. But within the dominion of bones, the Mortark of blood controls all, and even the champions of the dark gods will find themselves puppets in her schemes. Are the champions of the dark gods vampires? Maybe. And then along with this book was a Black Library Celebration 2021. This looks like it was a free book. It's from the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and it is a collection of short stories set in that universe. I don't know if any of them contain vampires, but they are all dark. Oh, and there's a Warhammer Age of Sigmar story in here called Death on the Road to Svartheim. I'm starting to get a good little collection of Warhammer books. Poe, 19 new tales inspired by Edgar Allan Poe. So these are Edgar Allan Poe pastiches or spin-offs. Got authors you've heard of in here: Gregory Frost, Kim Newman, Sharon McCrum. To coincide with the 200th anniversary of the birth of Edgar Allan Poe, this anthology celebrates the depth and diversity of one of the most important figures in literature. Compiled by multi-award-winning editor Ellen Dutlow, it presents some of the foremost talents of the genre who have come together to reimagine tales inspired by Poe. They have lent their craft to this anthology, retelling such classics as Fall of the House of Usher, The Telltale Heart, and The Mask of the Red Death, exploring the very fringes of the genre. Ooh, retellings. I love that. And this came out in 2009, so it's been around for a while. It's actually been on my wish list for years and years and years, and my brother finally sent it to me for my birthday. Thank you. Classic Tales of Horror. This is one of those, it's Canterbury Classics. I wanted to call it Barnes & Noble. It's very similar, but see, it's got the gold edges, the ribbon. It's just a horror anthology of classic tales. Let's see what, ooh, look at those pretty end papers. What do we get inside this one? I got this at BJ's, because BJ's sells books by the book. So we got some Edgar Allan Poe in here, Bram Stoker, Arthur Conan Doyle, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry James, Polidori. So yeah, this is like a lot of the other anthologies I already have. There's a lot of Edgar Allan Poe in here. Oh, some Charles Dickens, but it's like taking these authors who may have written a variety of different kinds of stories. Like Dickens didn't just write horror, but these are his horror. Poe didn't just write horror. Conan Doyle didn't just write horror, but these are the ones that are horror specific in the classic. And by classic, it usually means Victorian, which is my jam. That is my era. And it's so pretty. I love the embossed graveyard on the back with bats on the spooky moon. It's just such a beautiful book. I couldn't resist it. Look how pretty. Encounters with Death, a compendium of anthropomorphic personifications of death from historical to present-day phenomenon by Lila Wendell. Personifications of death are my favorite thing, like even more so than vampires. He's my boy. Including traditional and non-traditional death encounters told in the words of those who have experienced this growing phenomenon. Chapters include the meaning of anthropomorphic personification, select cross-cultural and historical personifications of death, some common precursors to manifestation, atmospheric similarities during encounters with a death entity, selected published encounters with death from the Azrael Project archives, the angel of our imaginings, death personified in literature and film, Ars Moriendi, images of death in art, and many others. This is like everything I want in a book. What more appropriate time than the 90s could there be for a book such as this? I guess this came out in the 90s. Is this really that old? How did I never hear about it until now? I saw someone on Tumblr tumble about this book. Yeah, it came out in 1996. Look at the Westgate Press logo. Can you see that? It's like a little death angel with his sword. I love it. After all, this is Azrael's decade, evidenced by the growing interactions everyday people are having with the Angel of Death. This book culls together a compendium of these encounters, from historical research to present-day phenomenon gathered through the Azrael Project over the past 20-plus years. Prior to this compendium, if one were seeking information on the death entity, you would literally need to research thousands of books and pore through stacks of research papers. With this project, you need look no further than one book to begin your journey, and not just this one book. As I have talked about in previous videos, I have many books about anthropomorphic personifications of death. I love them, and yet somehow I miss this one. This is a non-fiction paranormal reference book. Mother Goth Rhymes by Kaz Witness, a macabre collection of teeth-chattering, bone-chilling, blood-curdling poems penned by Mother Goth herself. So it's like Mother Goose, but she's Mother Goth. Oh, look at those pretty end papers. I just had to get this book for myself, but I'll also read it to my children, you know. Young Mother Goth, Ring Around the Wreckage, Sun Go Away, There Was an Old Widow, Rockabye Zombie, Roses Are Dead, If You're Stabby and You Know It, Laddie Vaddy, Hot Cross Burns, Humpty Dumped Me, Jack Spry, Berry, have you seen The Martian Man? How much is that baby in the window? Peter Doublehead, Jack and Jill, Hickory Dickory Dock, Mary Had a Little Beast, Sinking Little Car, Little Beau Dead, Little Miss Morgan, Sister May, Creepy Crawly Cobweb Ken, Old Mother Hubbard, Three Little Kittens, You Are My Rainstorm, Jack Draws Symbols, My Body Lies Under the Ocean, I'm a Little Monster, Row Your Boat. Ugh, and the art is just beautiful. Look at this. Peter Doublehead had a twin, but now he's dead. Little Miss Morgan sat at the organ composing her Requiem Mass. Along came a spider who offered to bite her, and now Morgan is pushing up grass. I love it! Keeper of Souls, speaking of anthropomorphic personifications of death, by Tessa Bateman, illustrated by Yayo. So this is a story about a shoemaker, like soles of your shoe, and Death, the Grim Reaper, doing stuff. Kirkus Reviews called it terrific, witty, and urbane, yet full of child appeal. Colin the shoemaker is dismayed when Death comes for his soul one night. Death is walking a bunch of shoes like doggies. The Haunted Mansion, Disney's Imagineering classic by Jason Searle. This is all about the making and origins of the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland, which is the best ride at Disneyland. Obviously, you can understand why I am a fan. Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Haunted Mansion, one of the most popular attractions in the history of Disney theme parks. This book explores how the attraction's 999 happy haunts were brought to life. Rare early concept sketches, detailed architectural drawings, and stunning still photography illustrate the mansion's evolution as it was designed and built at each Magic Kingdom park around the world. Oh, wow. So it goes, not just the one at Disneyland, where I grew up in California, but, all of them. I also received some movies. So this is Forever Night. We got the whole series here. And if you're not familiar with Forever Night, the TV show, let me tell you about it. This TV show came out in the 90s, 1994. When darkness falls, night rises. And it's night with a K, because, Detective Nick Knight, cop in Homicide Division, carries a dark secret. He is over 700 years old and a vampire, though he wishes for nothing more than to become mortal again. With his partner Don Schenk, Nick goes out every night on the streets of Toronto to catch serial killers, ritual murderers, and powerful vampires in a well-blended mix of horror and crime detection. At Nick's side stand two women, the pathologist Natalie, the only mortal who knows Nick's secret, and Jeanette, a vampire who is loyal to Nick and who wants to lead him back again to the path of darkness. The same person also sent me some other TV series, but they don't have, boxes. They're just the discs. The boxes have been lost. This is Moonlight, the TV series. I think that's another Canadian series, isn't it? The Canadians love their vampire series. I might be wrong about that. Don't quote me on that. But Moonlight, the TV series. And True Blood Season 4, which I do not have. I have True Blood Seasons 1, 2, and 3, but I didn't own Season 4 before. Of course, I've watched it on HBO, but now I actually have the discs. Thank you. Also, a copy of Innocent Blood, which I've never actually watched, even though it's a very classic vampire movie. The comedy that takes a bite out of crime. This ghoul just wants to have fun. She also wants an occasional bad guy to sink her fangs into because she never ever takes innocent blood. Anne Parlaud is Marie, a vampire who imperils Pittsburgh when she fails to kill off one of her victims, mob boss Sal Maselli, played by Robert Loggia. Sal realizes what a lucky stiff he is, a vampire with deadly powers. If Marie and her undercover cop boyfriend can't stop the mobster's new family of goons, Pittsburgh will be the pits. As in his American Werewolf in London, director John Landis saw in Michael Wolk's script many possibilities to be outrageous and transforms them into an outrageous screen reality. So it's a vampire, mafia, crime comedy. Bit, another lady vampire movie. The tagline is, "Let men be the one who are afraid to jog at night." Laurel moves to Los Angeles looking for a bigger, more accepting world after graduating from high school. On her first night in the city, she finds herself at a party and quickly falls in with a punk group of girls who also happen to be vampires. Not knowing if they want to kill her, befriend her, or turn her, Laurel learns to understand the love and dangers of her new first group of friends. This just came out in 2018. I remember hearing a lot about it. It's a very inclusive movie that people seem to really like, so I'm very happy that I finally get a chance to watch it, because I have not had that chance before now. And Blade of the Vampire, The Thirst Never Stops. This is a movie that came out in 2006. The blood hunt has begun. When ancient and bloodthirsty vampire Vandalis descends on Hollywood, it isn't long before he is preying on innocent runaways. But the killer meets his match when one of his fellow brethren tell him he's being hunted, and the hunter carries a mythical blade with the power to cut through even the undead. So an early 2000s vampire hunter movie that I have never even heard of, so I have no idea what it's going to be like. On to the stuff. I didn't just get vampires books and movies and TV shows. I also got a bunch of stuff, like, for instance, this shirt. This was my mom's birthday gift to me, was with this beautiful shirt. Thank you, Mom. She knows what I like. This is a mini that was hand-painted by an artist, and the artist said that they painted it in the style of Dracula's armor in the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie, so it's very beautiful. Thank you. This is a paperweight, which isn't a vampire, but how could I not? I don't have any paper up here, but you know what? You can live right there on my shelf. Beautiful paperweight. This is the tall vampire action figure from Nightmare Before Christmas. As you know, Nightmare Before Christmas features 3 vampires. One of them is tall, and this is his figure, and he comes with a hand to, like, switch out to put his umbrella in his hand. Very important for a vampire. These vampires need umbrellas. Tall vampire, thank you for sending this to me. This was from the same person who sent me the giant box full of stuff. They also sent me a Vampirina coloring book, and the cool thing about the Vampirina coloring book is that it has black pages and, like, soft waxy crayons, and, you know, I guess I can let my fledgling spawn color in this, but, you know, it's so cool. This person sent gifts specifically for my fledgling spawn as well, which I don't have here because I've already given it to them. And they love them. They love them so much. Thank you. And they weren't all vampire things or all gothy things. She just sent, like, random stuff for them. It was so sweet. They also sent this all this stuff came from them. This isn't even everything. This is just some of it. We have Ouija board breath mints. Yes. A skull. A beautiful pack of High Victorian playing cards. Skull Chalice patch, a whole bunch of masks with, like, spooky goth stuff. Some of them are from Hot Topic and elsewhere, and including some little ones from my babies. Nightmare Before Christmas journal. Love it. It has stickers in the back. Nightmare Before Christmas sticky notes. A lot of this came in a Hot Topic bag, so all kinds of, like, notions and buttons, and there was ribbons and fabric and, like, glittery stuff for crafting. You know I love to craft. Touchscreen gloves. Nightmare Before Christmas hair scrunchies for my hair, which I have just re-dyed. I was trying to dye it a dark red, purplish red, but it came out like purple black instead. It probably just looks black to you, but, you know, we try. Glow-in-the-dark vampire fangs for the little ones. These are little Grim Reapers that you race on the ground. They have they're racing Reapers. Monster Mash finger puppets. Beautiful skull charm. Rings. Medallion skulls. And Batman mints. Batman is not a vampire, despite his name. That would be great, but he's not. I hate to break it to you. You may have thought Batman was a vampire, but he's not. There was a lot more in this box. You saw the picture. I have already given some of it to my fledgling spawn, and I will give the rest that belongs to them as well, but I had to share the spooky gothy things with you. There was, like, Band-Aids, there was tissues, there were glow sticks, it's just tons of stuff. Thank you so much, so sweet. I never expected to receive such a generous birthday gift from you. The last thing I have to share for you is a piece of art that one of my friends drew for me, which is Louis and Lestat. This is an original piece of art. My friend does art on the internet and sells prints on Redbubble, and I'll put the link in the store if you're interested. It's all Interview with the Vampire, Anne Rice, Vampire Chronicles related art, but this is the original, and I did not know that they were sending me an original art. I have to get a frame for it. It's a 9x12, so it's not going to fit in, like, an 8x10 frame. I have to get a special fancy frame for it, and it's going right up on my wall. And this is Louis and Lestat right after Queen of the Damned, when Lestat is going through a very rough time. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. I almost cried when I got it. As always with vampire books, we are reading one this month for our Vampire Book Club. Come join us on Discord to join the Vampire Book Club, or just join the live streams. We have a live stream every month about our Vampire Book Club, and this month we are reading The Gilda Stories by Jewel Gomez, and Jewel Gomez just won a Bram Stoker Award, I believe, for being awesome, because Jewel Gomez is awesome, and this is one of those classic vampire books that's very important in your vampire book repertoire to know. So get it from your library, buy it from the store, join us on our Vampire Book Club. You have until June 13th to read this book and join us. And then on June 13th, we'll start another book. You can join us then. The link to my Discord is in the description. So is a link to my Patreon, as always, because this video was sponsored by my Patreon patrons who make all my vampire nonsense possible, who make the Discord possible, who make the book club possible. So thank you to my Patreon patrons, and thank you to everyone who sent me such wonderful birthday gifts. You too, Mom, you too, my brother, you too, my dad, and everyone else. Thank you so much for the birthday wishes. It was a wonderful vampire birthday month, even though my birthday is in spring, the least gothy of all seasons. Until next time, good night, and vampy reading.